Hi, Patrick Sedivy here, and I want to talk to you about this clock for just a second. Notice the time. What time is it? It's the last 5 minutes before 12. I want you to imagine that this is the last 5 minutes before midnight on the last day of the month. Is this what your life looks like at that time? Are you frantically trying to get a hold of your builders and anybody else that's going to place an order just so that you can get to the rank that you're trying to qualify at? Well, if this is you, you're not the only one. Many people have been there. But this is not good. It's not good for you. It's not good for your builders and leaders and your team. You burn them out. You make people feel like they're being used and that all you need is for you to rank advance. They don't care about you rank advancing. So I want you to think about this for a second. The last day of the month is not an emergency. It happens very predictably every month. So I'm sure you've heard this. If you fail to plan, you got it, you plan to fail. So the key is planning for the end of the month. And so I want to introduce to you Business Builder Worksheets. This is something that Elise and I have used ever since the very beginning of our building with doTERRA. And we did it not on fancy papers or sheets like you have right here, and not like what we're going to go through today, but in essence, all of the calculations and all of the planning that takes place, we did it from the very first month we were in doTERRA. We just needed to look at where we're at, what we're missing to get to our rank, and make a plan to make up that difference. And that's what these are all for. We have builder worksheets all the way from elite for every rank all the way up to diamond. So let's break it down a little bit and walk through an example of how you would use one of these. Here is the Elite Builder Worksheet. So in order for you to qualify as Elite, you need to have 3,000 OV total in your organization, right? That's how much volume you need. And so this Builder Worksheet is broken down into 3 steps. The first step is figuring out how many classes you need in order to reach or qualify as elite. Step number 2 is creating an action plan to make sure that that happens. Step number 3 is putting incentives in place for each of your builders and shares to help you along to get to that goal. So let's break this down and look at each of those steps up close. So here is step number 1. So the first thing that you need to do here is add up all of the scheduled LRP orders on your team. Okay. And underneath bullet or point number 1, you can see the 3 steps in order to do that. So log into your back office, click on the Wellness Advocate Services, go to Genealogy, go to Detailed Genealogy. Make sure that you're showing all of your levels in your team, right? Because it may be set for a default of only showing 3 levels or 4 levels or whatever. Make sure that you show all of the levels. You can always click 99, and I'm sure nobody has 99 levels in their organization, I don't think. So if you type in 99, it'll make sure that it shows everybody on your team. Okay, then you just need to add up all of the amounts that are in the column next LRP PV, and that will show you how much LRP orders are scheduled for next month. Now, why are we doing LRP? Well, LRP orders, the scheduled LRP orders are the best indicator. Now, nothing's going to be perfect. You can't predict the future precisely, but we have found that the next LRP volume is the best indicator of what next month's volume is going to be, right? Some people have tried to use the previous month's volume. Well, that's not always super accurate because you maybe have some big enrollment kit that was purchased, or maybe there was a promotion or something like that. So the next LRP volume is really what we have found to be the most consistently closest indicator of what your next month's volume is going to be. Okay, so that's what we're going to use. So you go to your virtual office, you figure that number out. For our example, let's say that comes out to be 1,432 PV. So your next step, number 2, subtract 3,000 from 1,432. You end up with negative 1,568. What all this is telling you is that you are missing, or you're short, 1,568 points in order for you to qualify as elite. Now, next to number 2, where it says subtract 3,000, there's a parenthesis that says if above 0, then enter 0. So let's say you had 3,500 points of scheduled LRP. Then you subtract 3,000, you're left with 500. That's above zero, so you would enter zero. And what's that telling you? It's telling you you don't need any more volume in order to qualify as elite. You're already going to be elite just from the LRP volume, and that's fantastic. That's all you need. At that point, you should be moving on to the Premier Builder worksheet and set your sights on going Premier, where you could also take advantage of some other fun bonuses that the company offers with the empowerment bonus. So back to elite here. So in our example, you're short 1,568 points. So the next step, number 3, is we're going to divide by 500. Why 500? Well, this is the average volume that you can expect to have per class. Now, this is assuming that you're following the process that we teach, meaning you're sampling people correctly, you're following up correctly, you're making sure that they have a great experience with the oils, then you're inviting them to a class, then you're following up, you're reminding them about the class 2 days before, you're texting them 2 hours before. So you're following that whole sequence of that whole process that we teach. And if you do that and you teach the class correctly and you close the way we teach, then you can expect to have 500 PV of volume brought in per class. Now, if you're not quite there, don't fret. Just work on the process, right? Work on each step of the way and figure out where is it that you're the weakest, and you can improve that. If it's your class presentation, then work on your class presentation. If it's the way you're sampling, then work on sampling. If it's about following up, then work on how you follow up, right? So make sure that you work on each of those steps to get them as good as possible, and you'll see that your average volume per class will begin to improve, okay? So in this case, we take negative 1,568, we divide it by 500, which is our average volume per class, and we end up with a number negative 3.136. What does this mean? Well, this simply means that you are short, or you're missing 3.136 classes for you to qualify as elite. Well, have you ever taught a fraction of a class? 0.136 of a class? Well, of course not. Maybe sometimes you feel like it. Maybe nobody came to your class, or maybe only one person bought one bottle of lavender or something, right? I mean, we've all had classes where things like that happen, okay? We've all had classes where nobody shows up, or nobody buys, or just one person buys some random small little thing. It happens, okay? So we always build in the safety factor, so we're always going to round to the nearest whole class, right? So actually, I'm going to say that differently. We don't round to the nearest whole class. That, in this case, would be to 3 classes. We're not going to do that, because if you just teach 3 classes, you're actually planning to be just barely short of elite, because you need a little more than 3 classes to get to elite. And if you schedule only 3 classes, then you're going to be just barely short, right? Assuming you have an average of 500 points per class. So what we do instead is we're going to always, as soon as it says more than 3 classes, then we're going to go to 4 classes, right? So I'm going to scratch out that negative 3.136, and I'm going to put negative 4, meaning I'm missing 4 classes in order to be elite. And I'd much rather have a few hundred PV more to hit my goal than to have a few hundred PV not enough and short, okay? So I always make sure that I blow through my goals. So you do that by over scheduling classes, and you can do that right here by scheduling 4 instead of 3. All right, let's go on to the step number 2. Here in step number 2, this is where you create an action plan for your builders and sharers on your team. So what we want to do next is list all of the builders and sharers who will work with you to hold classes this month or next month, right? So you just want to write their names down. So let's say Sally and Jennifer are the only people on your team willing to host a class or teach a class, or they're your builders and sharers on your team, or hosts. So you're going to work with them. If you have more, you can list all the ones that you have, but let's say for our example's sake, we have just these 2. Now the next step is to schedule the number of classes needed from step 1, which we did. We figured that we needed 4 classes, right? So schedule 4 classes by the 3rd Friday of the month. Okay? So what does that mean? Well, It means you want all of the classes, those 4 classes that you schedule, to happen on or before the third Friday of next month. Why is that? Well, simply, you'll make a plan and there's going to be for sure something that goes wrong along the way. Okay? Let me give you an example. Let's say you don't follow this advice. Let's say you schedule your class for the last day or even the last few days of next month. Okay? So come the last few days of the month, last day of the month, whatever, you teach the class, nobody shows up. Or just one person shows up, or just one person buys, and you bring in 100 PV instead of 500 PV. Okay, any one of those scenarios would destroy your plan to go elite because it's the last day of the month or the last couple days of the month, and you don't have enough time to make up that volume. You're going to be, oh my goodness, now I'm short just a few hundred PV. What do I do? That's when people end up getting on the phone and being frantic, just like that lady in the picture at the beginning of this presentation, where she had 5 phones that she was working on. You don't want to be doing that. So you schedule all of your classes to happen on or before the third Friday of the month. And that way, if that class on the third Friday of the month ends up being terrible and nobody shows up or gets canceled, you still have over a week before the end of the month to schedule another class and reinvite the people that you've been sampling, or even sample more people and invite more people to the class. And that way you can make sure that you reach your goal. Okay, so this is very, very critical. I hope you can see that the result of you not following this counsel will end up you being frantic at the end of the month or not even hitting your goal. Whereas if you do follow this advice, then you can always make sure you have enough time to adjust your plans along the way so that you can reach your goals. Okay, so we said we needed 4 classes. So what we're going to do is we're going to schedule those 4 classes. So you see here, we scheduled one on June 3rd, 7 p.m. I'm going to be the host, right? These are my classes. I'm going to be the presenter. June 6th, Jennifer said she's willing to host a class, but she's not a builder or anything like that. She doesn't know how to teach the class, so I'm going to present it again. This one is going to be at 6 p.m. Then we have another class on June 10th, where I'll do it at my house, and I'm the presenter again. And then the 4th one, let's say June 17th. This one is going to be hosted by Sally, but again, I'm going to be the presenter. Okay, so you just make sure that you schedule those 4 classes. Of course, if you have more classes scheduled, awesome, more power to you, and you'll just blow right through that goal, and you'll be preparing and setting yourself up to have more volume and getting ready to go Premier, which is the next step after your elite. So if you have more classes, fantastic. But you need a minimum of those 4 classes, and you want them as early on in the month as possible. You can see that I scheduled all of these 4 classes as quite early in the month, right? June 3rd, 6th, 10th, and 17th is the latest one. So that means I have basically the whole second half of the month to make up for any shortages, right? So for example, let's say the class on June 6th ends up being canceled. Well, I don't have to wait till the end of the month to reschedule one. Right on the morning of June 7th, after I've had that bad class, after I've licked my wounds, right, I just go ahead and I reschedule another class, and I could schedule that class for, let's say, June 20th. And it still gives me a couple weeks to prepare for that class, sample people, follow up, invite, and so forth, and to make sure that I have a good quality class by June 20th, right? And I have that second half of the month empty here so that I'm not overworked and overstressed in that latter part of the month. Okay, I hope this all makes sense to you. Let's move on to step number 3. So here in step number 3, this is where we want to set an incentive for each builder and sharer or host that's going to be helping us to reach our goal. Now remember, you going elite is your goal. That doesn't mean it's Sally's and Jennifer's goal, right? Or anybody else on your team for that matter. So if some situation comes up that makes it a little bit difficult, it's really easy for somebody to just cancel a class or to not work hard at it, not really work on inviting people or sharing samples if they don't really have a personal vested interest in reaching that goal. But if you give them an incentive, then they do, right? So here are some incentives. Let's say for Sally, you're going to give her a keychain for hosting the class. And depending on how many people, that's how many oils you give her in that keychain. Let's say for Jennifer, she already has a keychain, but she really, really wants an essential life book, right? And you're hoping that Jennifer kind of starts to build a business, and so you give her an essential life book. The key is give them what will motivate them to hold the classes, to build, to share, to invite people, and so forth. Now, at the bottom of the page, I gave you a few other ideas. Um, what you offer as an incentive does not need to cost money. You could do something like babysit the kids so that mom and dad could go out on a date, right? Maybe that's exactly what they need. They don't have enough time for each other. And by them hosting a class, it takes just another night where it fills it with something, right? And so for you to offer an incentive, like maybe you babysit the kids, they can go out and have a date. Maybe that's just the ticket that they need. Okay, or you can do an aroma touch for them or a diffuser, or I'm sure that you'll come up with a whole bunch of other ideas that you can offer as incentive. Whatever it is that motivates them, that you have and are able and willing to offer, that's the perfect thing. Okay, so that is how you fill out the Elite Builder worksheet. Now, I want you to keep in mind that the plan you start with is never the one that gets you there. So you're going to write out this plan. You're going to fill out this builder worksheet right at the very beginning of the month. So by the first day of the month, you want to have this builder worksheet filled out and your classes all scheduled so you can pack everything as close to the beginning of the month as possible so that you have enough time to fill in for buffers, extra classes if anything doesn't go right. And so what you're going to do is you're going to make that plan. You're going to make the plan as ideal as possible. But if something goes wrong, a class cancels, you get less volume at a class, then you could always fill it in. You keep adjusting it. So what I want you to do is have that plan handy and throughout the month, visit it every week and readjust as things go well or wrong. Just make any adjustments you need to that plan so that you're not frantic at the end of the month. And so you can achieve this with the Business Builder worksheets, whether you're going for Elite, going for Premier, going for Silver, Gold, Platinum, or Diamond. There's builder worksheets that you can use to help you plan and prepare so that you can achieve that rank as well as possible. And if you do that properly, this is how your end of the month should look like. Not like that frantic lady that was at the very beginning of this presentation, where she had like 5 phones that she was calling and frantically trying to get a hold of people. Because if you plan well, you should be able to achieve your goals before the last minute of the month. Okay? Now, there may be some exceptions where despite all of your planning, despite all of your safety nets that you have, and things go wrong and you still have to scramble a little bit at the end of the month, that's not the end of the world, but at least that's not going to be the rule for you. It's going to be more of an exception rather than what happens on a constant basis. Now, I want to show you this picture. I love this picture because this is our good friends and Presidential Diamonds, Kyle and Kirsten Kirschbaum. And I remember getting this picture from them on the last day of the month when they went Blue Diamond for the very first time. Now you'll notice on the bottom right corner, there's golf clubs. So this is them going golfing on the last day of the month. Why? Because they had already hit their goal before the end of the month. So they had nothing to be frantic about. They were good. They were there. Wouldn't it be much nicer for you to rank events like this every month than for you to be frantic at the end of the month? So that's what I want you to shoot for. I want you to remember this. There are some people who live in a dream world, and there are some who face reality. And then there are those who turn one into the other. So I want you to go and turn your dream world into reality, but make sure you plan to make it happen and make sure you keep yourself some safety nets and buffers so that you can make adjustments as necessary to that plan so that you can reach your goal. Thank you very much and have a great day.